Hi, my name is Renee Hobbs. Tonight is 20th, can you believe it? And we are steaming to the end of the semester with the talented students of COM 416 Propaganda. This is an upper level elective at the Harrington School of Communication and Media at the University of Rhode Island. If you thought last week's class on Chinese propaganda was mind-blowing, just wait until you encounter tonight's class, which I think will be equally mind-blowing. Now I'm realizing that I don't think I invited my teaching assistant Zoe to this class. That's not good. So let me just make sure that she gets a message there so she can find our class. I am very, very delighted to introduce you to our guest speaker, Dr. Elizaveta Friesem. She is a independent scholar, recent PhD, and really an expert on media literacy, gender, hegemony, and she brings a wealth of experience from growing up in St. Petersburg, Russia. And so let's see who's on the call tonight. I see Kaylin. Kaylin, let's test your microphone. How you doing?
Doing pretty good.
She's here. She's here. I see Francesca. Francesca will test your microphone.
Hi.
Oh, you sound so good. Francesca always looks like she's in high D. She's got like a really fast, good computer. It looks like she's in high D. Matt, give us a voice check.
How you doing? How you doing?
Your voice sounds great. Aaron, I see you peeping in and peeping out, but we'll do a voice check with you when you get a minute.
I'm here.
She's here. She's here. That's good. Mira, I see you tuning in. Can I hear your voice?
Hello.
Hello. That sounded wonderful. Hong Yen, I see you, but can I hear you?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm glad to hear it. Nicole, hello. Say hi to us.
Hello.
Oh, that sounded good. Nikita, I see you as well. Can you check your microphone?
Hello.
Nice. And Dre, I see you too. Can we test your microphone?
Hello.
You guys sound and look great. Okay, so let me share my screen with you and we'll talk a little bit about the agenda for tonight's class. And oh my goodness, do I have a lot of windows open. So let me see if I do this, if that works. I don't know if that works or not. That like shows you a whole lot of stuff, but maybe not the new window that I want to show. Hold on here. I'm going to unshare and I'm going to try resharing. There we go. Okay, so tonight's topic, Russian propaganda, is really going to be driven by your great questions. But before we launch in to our dialogue with Lisa, I just want to do a little bit of business at the front of the hour because I am so happy to report that I have finally finished reading your academic essays for LEAP 3 and grading your infographics. And so I want to begin the class by making some comments on the LEAP 3 because in general, I was pretty pleased with the quality of work that you did for this class. You, almost all of you clearly understood the genre of comparison contrast. You made some really creative and interesting choices to make in your comparison contrast, and you made some interesting new insights. You know, they say that's the essence of creativity, right? 1 + 1 equals a new idea. So comparison contrast is a great way to discover new ideas because simply by looking for similarities and differences, new ideas emerge. And I can see that very clearly from your papers. But what's going to happen right after class is that you're going to get back an email from me. And I wanted to make sure that you took full advantage of the feedback I'm providing. And for some of you, that's unfamiliar or new. So I want to show you what that feedback's going to look like, and so that you can appreciate it, right? And maybe even use it. So I'm using a slight example here from the wonderful work done by Tori and Amanda on the NFL's breast cancer campaign and their PETA campaign. I commented on their essay and I made a copy of the infographic. And then below that, I made some comments, right? What did I like, right? And what didn't I like? And then below that is a grade. Now, let me just make a note a little bit about, in this case, the way I'm using bolding here. If your criteria for evaluation paragraph has some bolds, see those bolds right there, those bolded words, that's really where you didn't meet my expectation. So when you go back and look at your work, you're going to see, in this case, they're missing an abstract, right? Or the comparison isn't really from the past and the present. So look for those bolds to give you some clues about where you kind of missed the mark, if you did miss the mark, on the expectations. But the other thing you have to do to make sense of this is you have to copy the link and you have to put it into a new window. And then lo and behold, you're going to see my comments. And so let me share my screen with you on that so you see what that exactly looks like. So when you open up your document, in some cases, you guys didn't give me permission to annotate your document. Maybe you made it view only, or I don't know. Obviously, using Google Docs is new for all of us, right? So sometimes I had to create a new Google Doc in order to make comments. If you walk in through your document and you do not see my comments in the margin like that, oh, are you guys seeing that now? I don't even know. I can't tell. Are you guys seeing a paper that looks like Tori Vecchio's comments with...
Not really. It's like this skinny line.
Oh, that's craziness. Let me try that again. Sorry. I'm going to try to share. Oh, let's try that. Okay, does that look better? Oh no, I see it way over there. Yeah, that's craziness. Okay, got it. So you might be seeing my comments now, maybe. And you can see the little boxes in the right-hand margin where I'm commenting on the work. Do you guys see those now? No, I don't even know if you see those now. Yeah, maybe you do. Give me a thumbs up if you see them. Yeah, Matt says, yeah. Cool. All right. So be sure to look both at the comments in the margins of your paper and the comments in the paragraph and the bolding of the key factors. Because one thing is for sure the case. You have two big things coming up. Right after this class, I'm going to open up the last quiz. That's worth only 50 points, so that's hopefully something you can do and get it over with, and it's not too hard. And then the last Leap 4, which is worth 150 points, that Leap 4 is really going to make the difference for you in terms of getting a great grade in this class and getting a lousy grade in this class. So I want you to look really carefully at the criteria for evaluation. I want you to know that I'm going to be looking at your work really carefully, and I want to make sure you're really comfortable with the expectations of Leap 4, because the expectations of Leap 4 are kind of substantial, right? So it's really crazy at the end of the semester when you guys have so much to do. Leap 4 is not the kind of project you can do the night before. It's not. And I've given you a really late deadline. It's not due till May 4th. So I'm not going to accept any late papers, right? I'm not. So at the end of the class tonight, we'll see if you guys have any questions about Leap 4, but I want to let you know that in general, I was really, really pleased with your Leap 3 work, and I feel you are really well prepared for completing Leap 4 in ways that will have a lot of integrity. I can see already many signs that you are synthesizing in a great way. I see lots of evidence that you are making connections between what we're seeing and reading and learning about in this class. And I have to say that I do think there is a best comment of the night. And so let me just see if I can share that with you. Okay, there we go. So tonight, our real focus is simply to engage in some questioning with Lisa and learn by interviewing. It's one of the most powerful skills of learning, and we can learn so much by interviewing. But before we interview her, I just want to point to some really great insights that occurred this week as you did some summaries on the reading. And so I'm just opening up that page now. And as I looked at these readings, right, I made some of my own questions and comments that I'm going to ask Lisa about. But there was one quote that was so quotable, right? You can see I paraphrased Donald a couple of times there. Huge, right? I made some comments about really great topics and really good things that were coming. But there is a hilarious quote here, and I'm trying to remember who said it. I hope that person is on the call tonight because it was so good. I just thought it was hilariously good and funny. Aha! Francesca! It's you, girl. The quote of the week goes to Francesca, and I can't even read it out loud. But I invite you to look at it now. She says, I feel like we have reached propaganda inception.
Yeah.
The fact that a fake think tank are now being created to point fingers at Russian, quote unquote, Russian propagandists is okay. By the way, girl, everything you did in that paragraph is beyond brilliant and totally captures where we're going. So I was really proud of that. And check out the great questions that we have for Dr. Lisa Friesem. So I do invite you to go to that page where you put the questions. Part of the art of the interview is figuring out how to make these questions flow. So I'm going to kick off with the first question to Lisa, because Lisa, in a way, your life story has to come first because it's so unusual for us to have a Russian graduate student. There are so few Russian graduate students in the United States. I have to understand from you, how did you find yourself learning English and deciding to come to graduate school in the United States? What was that all about?
Well, okay, well, I'm not going to tell you the whole story because it will take the rest of our class. So just to put it in a nutshell, I've been learning English since I was, 5. And I have always liked learning languages. English is not the only language that I'm learning. And I did my BA in Russia. And then the educational system in Russia is different, so it's kind of like a BA in the US. And then I did something that's an equivalent of a PhD in the US, so I did it also in Russia. As I was doing it, I was learning more and more about flaws of Russian academia, but I felt that I still wanted to be in academia and do research. And I realized that there are a lot of things I'm not learning and that I could learn them if I go outside of Russia. And that's what I did in 2011 when I started my PhD program at Temple University.
Got it. What a courageous and important transition in your life. And since you arrived in the United States, what has been the focus of your study, and what are you working on now?
Well, the focus of my study has been meandering, because as I arrived to the United States, I thought that I'm going to look at the way American popular culture texts are translated and dubbed in Russia, and how that may affect the way Russian audiences perceive the United States, which is still an interesting topic for me. Yes, and I have an unpublished paper on that that's available on Academia.edu. And then I learned about media literacy education, and I met Renee, and of course I was so excited, and I really felt that that's something I want to do because it's so practical and it's about social change and civic engagement, and at the same time, I realized that I have always been interested in issues of gender and sexuality, so I decided to combine these two issues, and my dissertation was about using principles of media literacy education to teach high school students about issues of gender in the media. And I'm still interested in that, but I have found that I don't want to focus only on gender and sexuality. So although it still remains my primary focus, I look at intersectional identities. So I look also at race and at physical ability, class, all this good stuff, how that intersects with gender and sexuality. And then I also have realized that I want to reconnect with the beginning of my education in Russia, because there I studied in the College of Philosophy, and so I realized that I want to go back to philosophy of communication and look deeper into what is communication and what is the role of communication in the social system, and how communication is so important for us, but how it also has all these problems that we reinforce in problematic ideologies as we are communicating, and these ideologies lead to inequalities connected to gender, race, sexuality, and all this stuff. So that's where I am now.
Okay, that's good. And I think I'm looking at the list of questions, and I'm thinking, Aaron, you have a question on this list. ER, right? That's you, right?
That is.
And I see that it's a good starter question. Can you kick it off with one of the question that's a good starter question from your list, from the list that's at the bottom of the page?
I just have to pull up the Google Doc because I don't remember what I wrote, even though it was like half an hour ago. Okay. Almost there.
You have two really good ones, and either one, or you have three really good ones, and all of them are good, but one is good for starting us off.
Okay. So I don't know which one you're referring to, but I guess I'll start with the middle one on what are Russians' thoughts on Putin, and then on, I don't know how to say this, but Novorossiya?
Russia, I guess.
Good job. Good question.
Do you mean the part of Russia that has been recently taken from Ukraine? That this thing. Well, it's a very good question, and it's a very complicated question, directly connected with the issue of propaganda and fake news, because how do we know what Russians think about Putin, right? So we know, like, you cannot go and ask every single Russian person and then, create some sort of chart and list. So we have to go to the media, right? And so the Russian media has different versions of answers to this question. Well, apparently for some time, Putin's ratings have been quite high, but recently they have been fluctuating. And also something that needs to be added, that in Russia there was, I think it doesn't exist anymore, this special agency, that independent agency that was supposed to do polls, like polling using some very important questions, and because they were independent, I think they were more trustworthy, and they did show that Putin had quite high ratings around the time when Russia, engaged in the war and took the Crimea. But then I think they started showing that Putin's ratings were kind of getting lower, and the last thing I heard is that they were closing down this independent agency. So that's why I'm saying that this question is really complex. I think that Putin is having some rating problems right now, but would have to dig really deep to know the truth.
Okay, good show. Now, Erin, you have another really great question. That is a very good question on that list that kind of naturally follows.
It's like a 50-50 shot. I guess, well, this one's a little more broad. So are Russians aware that their news is like fake or manipulated?
What a great question. Lisa, are Russians aware that their news is fake and manipulated?
I think some might be aware. Well, you cannot generalize, and you cannot say about all Russians if they're aware or not. I think that some Russians believe the media, and some Russians are suspicious, and some Russians think that it's totally fake. In this sense, I believe it's probably similar to the US. Not everybody takes everything they read in the news as fact. I would not tell you the exact percentage, how many people believe and how many people doubt. But I think that younger people might be more skeptical, and older people might be more trusting the media.
Okay, so let's turn our attention to RT, Russia Today. Does anybody have a question about RT for Lisa? Matt?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, it was a question I wrote down in the Google Doc. I was going to ask if there are any like third-party media outlets that kind of point out corruption within the Russian government. I know it's kind of hard because the government will probably come after you for saying things like that, but I'm wondering if there's sort of an anonymous news source that posts things like this in Russia.
So that's a great question. I'm glad that you're asking about it, because indeed there are some opposition or oppositional news outlets, and it's not easy to run such an outlet in Russia right now, because official Russian media is pro-government, and they don't really tolerate anti-government media. There are several websites that provide an alternative point of view and do highlight a lot of corruption. There is this opposition leader by the name of Navalny, who is running this anti-corruption fund. And they are doing major, really interesting investigations, because corruption is rampant in Russia. The Russian officials, they have literally palaces, and they take huge chunks of land and without official permission, and just put fence around it. So stuff these anti-corruption people do, they buy drones, put cameras on them, and just fly above those mansions, and then post these investigations. And all these things, the interesting thing is all these things are actually in the open. If you just go and look for it, they have volunteers who go and compare names and see who owns what and find like major properties belonging to families of Russian government officials outside of Russia or in Russia that their salaries cannot possibly support. So they're posting this information, and there are articles about there are political prisoners. There are a lot of bad things going on in Russia. Like recently, you might have read some things that came out about gay people in Chechnya, that's a part of Russia, who are basically put in prison, and it's very bad. So there are several websites that write about that.
So what's cool, what's interesting about that is that you're saying that a lot of information about the corruption and the human rights abuses are available to Russian audiences.
Well, so that's where I wanted to go next. So I think some of those websites are actually, the government is fighting with them. There is one website it's kind of like a news website, but also constellation of blogs by different opposition personalities, and this website has been closed again and again, and they're creating like mirrors. I don't know, I'm not a programmer, so I don't know how that works, but I remember a while back they were like celebrating that they've created like 100 like mirror website, because they're all like
taken down in Russia. It still exists in
yeah, I don't know, some of those websites you cannot access because they're really really bashing the government, and there are some websites that are providing, I think, more objective position, but maybe a little less extreme. And I think there's one news website that's called the Medusa, and it's run by a person, an editor of a news source that existed in Russia, and then they closed it down, and then she went and she outside of Russia, and so she's somewhere in Europe. So this one I think is available to Russians. So I think that for a Russian person who is interested in finding this information, it's available. It's maybe not easy, but it's available, and there are different ways to find it. This like counter information.
Okay, that's kind of comforting to know. So now, Francesca, if you can kick us off with this crazy website. We read this article, Elisa, that described this website, Prop or Not. It says, your friendly neighborhood propaganda identification service since 2016. It says, Russia is manipulating U.S. public opinion through online propaganda, and this site is a resource who want to understand Russian influence operations targeted at U.S. audiences, distinguish between propaganda and commercial clickbait, and help identify propaganda and push back. So the first question we have to ask you is Russian propaganda influencing Americans, in your opinion? Why or why not?
Well, this is a question, this is a deeper question that's connected to a broader question of, how much can the media influence people's opinions. And, different scholars answer this question differently. There is the famous media facts extreme that, yes,
Am I the only one who's not able to hear her right now?
Huh? You don't hear me?
I hear you. Mira's having a little trouble with her sound. Anybody else? A thumbs up if you're having a trouble.
Okay, I think it was me. Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
The doggy is learning about Russian propaganda. All right, so where was I? Yes, so some people would say that the media definitely influence us and can shape our opinions. The other extreme would be no, and then in the middle, we can, and I exist in the middle of a spectrum. So because I believe that it's complicated, like we can make different interpretations of information that we find. But at the same time, certainly this information is not completely neutral. But I still think that usually information that it's basically a confirmation bias. You know, if there's somebody who, you know, already kind of predisposed to believe certain thing, they will look online and they will find a lot of you know, because you can find any opinion online, and they will find a lot of confirmation to that. So in this sense, because Russian media do put a lot of problematic things, I would say, about the US, you know, whoever already has this opinion and they will go out, you know, these sources that Russian propaganda is placing, you know, on the web, they will be available, and in this sense, these people will find a confirmation to their beliefs.
Okay,
but
I see Francesca has her hand raised because she wants to ask you something. Francesca.
I'm wondering if Russian citizens know what type of information like we're getting in America right now, because I feel like the majority of American citizens are now looking at Russia as like super sketchy from this sort of propaganda that's happening. So like, do Russian citizens know this, and how do they feel about this if they do know this?
Well, I think that, again, I cannot answer for all Russian citizens, but I think that people are certainly aware that in the US there is this kind of discussion that maybe, or definitely, Russia is influencing American politics. Well, I can tell you just a personal anecdote that my mom, who visits me twice a year, she was coming to visit me this December, and she was actually worried because it was after the election and everybody was talking about Russia and how Russia has hacked the elections. So she thought that, oh my God, what's going to happen with me when I'm entering the US? But actually everybody was really nice. And so this just shows that, you know, she's clearly aware, and not just because I'm actually not talking with her about politics because we have different opinions. But so it's not like I told her. So she's aware, and I'm sure there are other people who are aware and might have different feelings about it. But again, not everybody is similarly aware. Not everybody has the same interpretation.
Okay, good. Let's see who else wants to ask a question. Mira.
I'm sorry again for that interruption before. I am curious. I'm actually going to try to combine the two questions I put into the doc. The first one would be, I just am curious, like, how you would describe the strengths and weaknesses of Russian propaganda in terms of like the content, context, and the relatability to Russian citizens. And as a follow-up, if with one of the articles, if the RT were to, in theory, register as a lobby, like it would mean, other than being hilarious, like, do you think it would, how do you think that would resonate with Russian public, and do you think it would have any change, how would it affect the ongoing saga of the blame game for the election and blah, blah, blah? Like, would it change them from being just sort of like an off the cuff, like, their own thing, like, well, we register it now, so it's fine, like, on both sides? That's my convoluted question.
Wow, great questions. Two good questions. Lisa.
Okay, I'll start with the first one, and then maybe we'll have to restate the second one because,
yeah, probably, sorry.
because it was really long. It's okay. They're both great. So First, so how is, as far as I understand, the first question was,
how would you describe the strengths and weaknesses of Russian propaganda in terms of content, context, and its relatability to Russians?
Well, I think that propaganda, the strength of any propaganda depend on whether it's clicks with the social context. You know, like in Germany, for example, with the Nazi propaganda, it was so effective because Germans, they wanted to hear these things. They wanted to be strong. They wanted to think that they are, you know, unique and that they can rebuild themselves. And, you know, and in this sense, Russian propaganda is a strength of Russian propaganda because it comes in the right time when Russia is economically weak, and there are a lot of problems that Russians would like to overcome. And, you know, always comparing yourself with the other and saying, oh, we are cool and those other guys, they are not cool and we are better. You know, a lot of Russian propaganda depends on this, like, otherizing, right, the West, and saying that we have the right values and they have the wrong values, and so don't listen to what they're saying, don't look at whatever they're doing, even if it seems like it's good, but it's actually bad because they're just morally wrong, so to say. So, and when you're weak and when you are in the weaker position, you actually tend to listen to that because you want to feel like you're better and you're stronger. And well, the weaknesses of Russian propaganda, I guess that, you know, as any propaganda, it cannot sustain itself forever because it's, you know, propaganda, it's you know, it's in a way it's shallow because there are, if you dig deeper and really do your research, you see that no, it's not like Russia has better values and the West has awful values, and actually a lot of things outside of Russia are really nice and can be you know, something that Russia can learn from. So this is the weakness.
Thank you.
Okay,
So the second question.
Wait. I want to ask, I feel like because our time is going, I have to ask you about this crazy website, Prop or Not. Francesca suggested to us, based on her critical reading of the essay, that this website, which purports to be unveiling how Russia is manipulating U.S. opinion, right? And which is an anonymous group. Check it out. The independent team of concerned American citizens who collect information about Russian propaganda. Is this part of Putin's evil plan to make us afraid of Russian propaganda? Or is this a genuine effort on the part of anonymous Russians to try to unpack the complicated ways in which Russia has been trying to influence American public policy?
Well, first of all, I cannot claim to get into Putin's head and say what exactly his plan is. I would like to sometimes to know what exactly he's thinking, but I can't, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. So I think it's probably very complicated because it's not like he is this mastermind and everybody just does what he says. There are a lot of influences, and he has pressures that he has to, you know, he has other people, their expectations, and whatever, you know, the network of people he exists in. So whose plan is that, and how it evolves, hard to say. And then the second part of the question is, you know, whether, you know, yes, maybe there are some Russians who, you know, genuinely want to, like, because, yeah, there exist, as I said, those opposition websites that are bringing information to Russians. So maybe this is a similar website that is supposed to bring this kind of information or open eyes of American audiences. But as I previously said, I don't believe in this kind of uniform and predictable effect of the media. So I think it's to say that the way the U.S. election turned out is the only reason for that is Russian fake news and Russian propaganda. That would be just to miss a host of very complicated network of reasons,
Okay.
right? So that might be one thing, but I just saying that Americans are somehow brainwashed by Russian propaganda. I think that would be really simplify things.
Fair enough. Francesca.
I'm just curious what you think about how this is like an American, like this group is, I know he said he talked to an American man and it's made up of 40 people who are volunteering. I just think that's so bizarre. And so I just want to know, like, I want to know what their purpose is, like, because it's obviously like they want it out there and they want it to seem like Russia is like really influencing like the American public and that it's this big scary thing, but it's Americans behind it. That's what it seems like. So it's, I don't know. It's so weird.
So what's weird about this? Why can't Americans try to inform other Americans about perceived dangers of Russian propaganda?
I just think that it's very bizarre for somebody to go to such a length in like a secret group of 40 people. Like it just doesn't sound realistic that there's no like ulterior motive behind such a big thing. I don't know.
Francesca, I think one of the reasons why I thought your post was so interesting was that when I went to the website, when I went to the platform, and after I read the article, I was like, I need to see this website for myself. And when I went there, I thought, whoa, if you're a conspiracy theorist, this is like pig heaven. Whoa, it's like Alex Jones on steroids, right? So I started thinking about how, sure, there's like entertainment value to like, let's go find out how Russia's trying to influence us, right? So for the conspiracy nuts, this is like gold. Then part of me thought, actually, for the genuine Russian propagandists, the disinformation of the Russian government, ideas that say Russia's been effective is actually a really good message, isn't it? The Russians are so friggin' smart that they have been effective. That actually helps Putin, doesn't it? Right? So I started thinking a little bit about how really complex and twisted the motives for this site might be, and realizing, that's the challenge for us as people who are trying to analyze contemporary propaganda. We can never know the motives, right? We can't. The motives are never transparent to us. Matt.
I just wanted to mention that, like, it kind of like you said, gives Putin a leg up because it makes Americans fear him and fear what they can do just through media. And then you start looking at all news in a sense of, did they like manipulate this in any way, like, or something like that. And it kind of like just makes everybody afraid that they can manipulate whatever they want whenever they want.
Right.
Also, I just had a question. I was going to ask if you, Lisa, think that the fact that Putin has been in a position of power for basically like 17 years has like an effect on how much influence he has on the government itself, and also like on like how much leverage he has with other people like in the government.
It's a great question, but again, you're asking me about some inside information that, not being part of Putin's club, is very hard for me to answer. I do think that he certainly has a lot of power, and You know, there's a whole network around him that's controlling things that are happening in Russia. But could you repeat again? What was like the main question? How did he get this power, or what was?
No, I was just saying that because he's been in power for so long as either president or prime minister, like, do you think that like he kind of like gets away with stuff that even like his like the people under him may not agree with? Do you think he kind of just does as he pleases sometimes?
Is he a dictator?
Maybe. Again, it's a difficult question. I think that rather than trying to understand these intricacies, and I think that there's some things that we might never know, never ever find out. I think it's maybe more interesting to focus on things that we can at least try to understand. Your question is great. I just think it's really difficult to find out. You need to be like a spy and infiltrate the Kremlin and really like read their documents. I don't think that. I mean, maybe CIA would answer this question, but I'm not in CIA.
Lisa, do you think are Russians aware of the claims that are made in the West that Putin has poisoned his political enemies?
Like this, what's his name?
Yeah.
Litvinenko.
That's something that's known by Russian people generally, or not known?
I think that this is something that people have heard. Not everybody agrees with that, but I think it's been a big story, and so I think that's something that's people are aware of these accusations, whatever position they take.
Right. So that's really fascinating to me because it is making me think a little bit more about what are some of the similarities and differences between Chinese and Russian propaganda, right? I am starting to think a little bit more about that. So we have time for about two or three more questions. Is there somebody I haven't heard from tonight who would like to ask a question? Nikita. Nikita, turn on your microphone because we can't hear you.
Sorry. So yeah, after listening to the discussion and doing a lot of readings, there's like all kinds of problems coming from, the West and Russia and China with disinformation. I just wonder, like, how can we educate people and encourage people to, like, question the mainstream media, because, they also have their faults, without like creating this conspiracy theorist culture and like a public that's like passive and vulnerable to this kind of information.
How can we educate the U.S. Audience?
I would say on all fronts, because the more that you learn about how all this is going on, I think the more sort of doubtful you become about everything that you read. And like, how can we teach people, I mean, including myself, how to sort of take information and not become like, feel totally hopeless about the whole situation?
Well, you're asking a really deep philosophical question. I'm glad that you're asking it, but it's not easy to answer in like 9 minutes that we have left. What educating people is what I'm interested in as a media literacy scholar, and Renee, obviously, that's her, life commitment to educate people and help them understand mediated communication. How do we do that? I think that is just something that needs to be done from an early age. But the problem is that it's not like we can just come in and say, the problem is not that people are not educated. The problem is that there are social structures that not allowing that to happen. Like if in Russia, let's say, there are those structures, people in power who don't want the majority of the population to understand how government works, they won't be really happy if this kind of educational initiatives take place, right? So it's not just about creating effective programs and embedding them in the education system. It's about also challenging people who currently have power in, because there's media literacy education exists in Russia, but I don't personally think it's really effective right now.
Okay, so that's actually a very good place to stop, Lisa, because in some way, Nikita, you're raising a question that we're going to take up for our last class. And Lisa, you are alluding to a topic we're going to talk about next week in our last class, right? All this learning about propaganda, has it just made you so cynical that you can't trust anything? You can't believe anything? There's nothing you can count on as true? Well, that might be, if you come to the end of the semester and are destabilized like that, that might be where you're at. But it's not a place where you should be. And so we're going to try to talk next week a little bit about some of those ideas about the ways in which learning about propaganda creates opportunities for activism, creates opportunities for challenging some status quo issues, and also creates opportunities to share understandings with respect, right? It's really the case that we have different understandings of the world. We have different understanding of capitalism and socialism. We have different understandings of economic systems. And in order for propaganda to lose its power, we have to take down some of that us-them thinking that is at the root of what makes it so powerful and so effective. So I just want to share my screen with you a little bit and talk for you just a few minutes about what's coming next. And then I want to thank Lisa for joining us tonight. And hold on just a second here. I'm going to go here back to our class. I do invite you, okay? I do invite you to click on this. We didn't have time to do this tonight, but if you haven't seen Samantha Bee's interview with the Russian propagandists, this is a must view. We'll just watch the first minute or two.
Welcome back to the show. If this election has done one good thing for the country, which it hasn't, that would be to ensure that nobody will ever want to use email again.
The emails that were stolen are released by WikiLeaks.
Maybe there is no hacking, but they always blame Russia. She doesn't know if it's the Russians doing the hacking.
Yes, she does know. So does Donald Trump, even though he refused to accept that intelligence briefing like it was collect call charges from Tiffany. But while Russia was hacking computers to influence our election, our brains had already been hacked by dank-ass memes that drown out facts with baseless conspiracy theories. Unlike the people who share...
All right, so if you keep watching, you're going to find a really cool interview with some Russian hackers. And I want you to be thinking a little bit about, is Samantha Bee's comedy a form of propaganda? And is it beneficial or harmful propaganda? That's what I want you to think about for next week. All that's happening next week is this. You don't have anything to read. You don't have anything to write. You just are working on your Leap 4 project. The quiz for this week, which will focus on Russian and Chinese propaganda, is going to open. That's actually the wrong date. It's going to open, it's going to open tomorrow, the 21st, and it'll close on the 24th. Most of you had the opportunity. If you missed the quiz, many of you were able to retake it. Our last class is April 27th, and there's the specifications for the Leap 4. Let me just remind you, in the Leap 4, you're going to be reflecting on your learning by creating 2 forms of media of your choice to step back and think a bit more deeply about what you've learned. Francesca, one of the things I loved about your post this week as you reflected on Russian propaganda is you took us all the way back to Ryan Holiday. You remember? Trust me, I'm lying, right? Mm-hmm. And you drew some important threads. In your Leap 4, ladies and gentlemen, your job is to make connections Pull it together. Think about what did we learn? Week 1, week 2, week 3. See what you can pull together. That's how you're going to find new ideas and really reflect deeply on the takeaways for this class. So now, Lisa, we want to give you a proper thank you, but we want to do it in the way COM 416 always does it. So we need a Russian hand signal that's distinctly Russian. I don't know what it is.
Russian hand signal.
You have to have some kind of hand signal that we can go out on here. A gesture.
I'm struggling to think of some not obscene Russian gesture.
Oh, let's do an obscene one. Come on, girl.
No. Let's not do obscene gestures. I don't know. I cannot think of a special. You should have asked me before.
Like in the Soviet age.
Yeah, like from the Soviet
age. Yeah.
So, do you can
like something like this?
Wait a second.
I don't know. This is right or wrong. And then
Uh,
it's right or left. I don't know.
You what? What are you doing again? Can you do it again? Like I don't know how Soviet it is. Isn't it like what people in the military do? Russians are not that different in the way they, say goodbye and hello with their gestures. So
there it is, you guys. She's giving us. You start here and you go out. You start here and you go out. All right, we always end with a goodbye. We are saying thank you to Lisa for joining us with our hand gestures of love and appreciation. We're going to say Nostrovia.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's Russian. That's
Nostrovia.
You can
Thanks
say
for
that.
joining us tonight. We'll see you guys next week. Oh, you guys are so cute. All right, see you again. Bye-bye.